The forgotten message. The warning had been broadcasting for 300 years, pulsing through the void like a forgotten heartbeat. Commander Zekthai of the Vorthan Dominion watched the ancient signal flash across his monitoring station for the 1000th time, its message written in a dozen dead languages that their translation matrices could barely decipher. The words remained the same, unchanging through centuries of repetition. Do not approach. Do not interfere. We are watching. The massive crystalline chamber of the Galactic Senate hummed with the combined energy of 17 different species, each one convinced of their superiority over the cosmos. The Vorthons controlled the military might, their ships numbering in the tens of thousands. The Kalari Commonwealth dominated trade routes with their vast merchant fleets. The Synthoid Collective processed information at speeds that made organic thought seem glacial. Together they had mapped every corner of known space, catalogued every threat, and dismissed every mystery as eventually solvable. Senator Velmar stood at the center podium, her forearms gesturing dramatically as she addressed the assembly. The signal from Sector 7 remains nothing more than an automated beacon, likely left by some extinct civilization attempting to seem more powerful than they were. Our exploratory committee recommends immediate investigation and colonization of the surrounding systems. The resources there could fuel our expansion for another millennium. The vote was unanimous. Every representative agreed that ancient warnings were relics of a more primitive time, when species still believed in monsters lurking in the dark between stars. Modern civilization had evolved beyond such superstitions. They had conquered physics, mastered faster-than-light travel, and built weapons that could crack planets like eggs. What could possibly threaten them? Admiral Kreshtok led the expeditionary force personally, commanding from the Bridge of the Supremacy, a dreadnought that stretched 15 kilometers from bow to stern. His fleet of 800 vessels represented the finest military achievement of the allied species. They jumped through hyperspace in perfect formation, emerging at the edge of Sector 7 where the warning signal originated. The beacon sat alone in empty space, a small metallic sphere no larger than a shuttle, scarred by centuries of micrometeorite impacts. It continued its endless broadcast, the same words cycling through dead languages. The Admiral laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the bridge. This is what the Senate feared, a piece of space junk older than some of our colonies. Destroy it and begin surveying the sector for resources. The weapons officer targeted the beacon, but before he could fire, every screen on every ship in the fleet went dark. Then slowly, new words appeared in perfect galactic standard, the common language used for interspecies communication. The message was simple and direct. You were warned. Space itself seemed to ripple and tear as something emerged from dimensions that shouldn't exist. The ship that appeared defied every law of physics the galactic species had catalogued. It was massive, easily dwarfing the Supremacy, but its design was impossible. Angular sections folded into themselves, creating optical illusions that hurt to perceive directly. The hull seemed to be made of something that existed partially outside normal spacetime, flickering between solid matter and something else entirely. Admiral Kreshtok had seen ships from every known civilization, studied every possible configuration of technology, but this was something beyond his comprehension. The vessel didn't register on any of their sensors properly. One moment it read as larger than a moon, the next smaller than a fighter craft. The mass readings fluctuated wildly, suggesting the ship could alter its fundamental properties at will. Open communications channels, the Admiral ordered, trying to maintain his composure. All frequencies, all protocols. Whatever this is, we need to establish contact. The response came not through their communication systems, but directly into the minds of every sentient being in the fleet. The voice was calm, patient, and somehow infinitely tired. We are humanity. We warned you to stay away. You chose not to listen. The Admiral felt his 6 hearts skip in sequence. Humanity was a legend, a myth told in the oldest archives. According to the stories, they had been a young species that vanished without trace millennia ago, leaving behind only scattered ruins on dead worlds. The archaeological evidence suggested they had destroyed themselves in some great catastrophe, a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked aggression. You're supposed to be extinct, Kreshtok transmitted back, his thoughts shaky. The histories say humanity destroyed itself thousands of years ago. The voice carried what might have been amusement. We learned that extinction was preferable to what we were becoming, so we chose isolation instead. We locked ourselves away, studied ourselves, changed ourselves. The beacon was placed to keep others from disturbing our work. You have removed that beacon. Now we must act. The human ship began to change, its impossible geometry shifting into something even more incomprehensible. Weapon systems that shouldn't exist powered up with energy signatures that made the fleet's instruments scream warnings. The admiral realized with growing horror that every technological assumption his civilization had made was wrong. They had thought they understood the universe, but they had only been playing in the shallow end of possibility. "Wait," Kreshtok pleaded. "We didn't know. We can leave. Replace the beacon, pretend this never happened." The human voice grew softer, almost sympathetic. 300 years of warnings in languages you could translate. 300 years of choosing to ignore them. We studied your species while we waited. The Vorthans who solve every problem with force. The Kalari who measure everything in profit. The Synthoids who believe consciousness is just complex programming. You all share the same flaw that we once possessed. You believe that power gives you the right to take what you want. The first shot from the human vessel wasn't a beam or projectile. It was something that existed partially in multiple dimensions simultaneously. It passed through the shields of 3 destroyers as if they weren't there, and when it reached the hulls it didn't destroy them. It transformed them. The metal and composite materials began to shift, molecular bonds rearranging themselves into patterns that shouldn't be stable. Within seconds, 3 proud warships had become modern art sculptures, their crews safely transported to escape pods that materialized from nowhere. The admiral watched his tactical display in stunned silence, as ship after ship was neutralized without a single casualty. The humans weren't killing anyone. They were demonstrating the vast gulf between what the galaxy thought was possible and what humanity had achieved in isolation. Every counterattack the fleet launched simply ceased to exist before reaching the human vessel. The energy and matter converted into harmless light that sparkled like fireworks in the void. "Why show mercy?" the admiral asked. "If you have this power, why not simply destroy us?" "Because we remember what we were," the voice replied. "We remember the rage, the need to dominate, the pleasure in victory. We isolated ourselves to escape those impulses, to evolve beyond them. But your arrival proves that isolation is no longer possible. The galaxy must learn what we learned. Power without wisdom is the path to extinction." The human ship completed its demonstration, leaving the entire expeditionary force disabled but intact. 800 of the most powerful warships in known space floated helplessly, their weapon systems transformed into botanical gardens, their engine rooms converted into art galleries. The message was clear. Everything the galactic civilizations had built, every achievement they celebrated was nothing compared to what humanity had become. "Return to your Senate," the voice instructed. "Tell them that humanity is returning to the galaxy, not as conquerors but as teachers. We will share what we've learned, but only with those willing to learn. The age of taking what you want because you have the power to take it is over. Those who cannot accept this will find themselves as helpless as you are now." As the human vessel began to fade back into its impossible dimensions, it left behind a new beacon. This one broadcast in current languages, its message clear and simple. Humanity has returned. Choose wisdom. The reckoning the Senate chamber had never been so quiet. 800 commanders and their crews had returned with identical stories, their ships transformed into monuments to humanity's transcendence. Senator Velmar stood where she had stood a month ago, but her confidence had evaporated like morning mist. The holographic displays around the chamber showed the converted ships, each one still functional as a vessel but completely useless as a weapon of war. High Commander Tortson of the Kalari Commonwealth was the first to break the silence. His species communicated through color changes in their translucent skin, and currently, he was cycling through patterns of deep distress. 17 more colonies have reported contact with human vessels. In each case, they appear, demonstrate capabilities we cannot comprehend, and leave behind the same message. Choose wisdom. Our entire economic model is based on resource extraction and expansion. What they're demanding would collapse our civilization. The Synthoid representative, a collective consciousness inhabiting thousands of mechanical bodies, spoke in perfect unison. "We have analyzed all available data. Human technology operates on principles that violate our understanding of physics. They manipulate space-time, matter, and energy at the quantum level with precision we cannot achieve. More troubling, they seem to have solved the consciousness problem. They can transfer, modify, and enhance consciousness itself. Admiral Kreshtok, still shaken from his encounter, added his own observations. They could have destroyed us easily, but they chose demonstration over destruction. Every action was calculated to teach rather than terrorize. They want us to understand that the old ways are finished, but they're offering us a chance to adapt. The debate that followed lasted for days. Some species called for total war, pooling all resources to develop countermeasures. Others suggested negotiation, trying to find common ground with humanity. A few radical voices even proposed accepting the human ultimatum completely, abandoning their expansionist policies in favor of the wisdom humanity promised to share. The decision was taken from them when humanity made their next move. Across the galaxy, simultaneously, human vessels appeared at the capital worlds of every major civilization, not as invaders but as visitors. They didn't attack or threaten, they simply existed, their impossible ships hanging in orbit like questions waiting to be answered. The message came through every communication device in the galaxy at once. A human appeared on screens and in holographic projections. But this wasn't quite the human form from ancient records. They had evolved, their bodies showing signs of genetic modification and technological enhancement that had been seamlessly integrated. The figure appeared ageless, with eyes that held depths of experience no natural lifespan could account for. The human spoke with a voice that carried warmth despite the seriousness of the message. "I am Ambassador Chen, speaking for the Terran Collective. We understand your fear and confusion. 3,000 years ago, humanity stood where you stand now, believing that might made right, that resources were meant to be taken, that other species were competitors to be defeated or tools to be used. The image shifted, showing historical recordings from humanity's past, wars that had devastated entire worlds, weapons that had killed billions, expansion that had consumed everything in its path. The galactic species watched in horror as they recognized their own behaviors reflected in humanity's dark history. We nearly destroyed ourselves," Chen continued. "In our final war, we developed weapons that could unravel reality itself. When we stood at the brink of using them, something remarkable happened. We stopped, not because of fear or exhaustion, but because we finally understood. Power without wisdom leads only to extinction, so we made a choice. We isolated ourselves and spent 3 millennia learning to be better. The presentation showed humanity's transformation, cities that existed in multiple dimensions, allowing infinite space without environmental destruction, energy drawn directly from quantum fluctuations making resource scarcity obsolete, consciousness networks that allowed individuals to share experiences and knowledge while maintaining their unique identities. Medical technology that had made death a choice rather than an inevitability." Senator Velmar found her voice. "You're asking us to abandon everything we've built, everything we are." Chen's expression grew compassionate. "No, we're asking you to evolve beyond it just as we did. The technologies we've developed, the philosophies we've embraced, they're not human secrets. They're the inheritance of any species wise enough to accept them. But first you must prove you're ready. You must choose cooperation over competition, growth over expansion, wisdom over power." The High Commander's skin flickered through rapid color changes. "And if we refuse, then you'll continue as you are," Chen replied. "But you'll do so without the ability to harm others. Every weapon you build will transform into something beneficial. Every aggressive action will be neutralized. You'll be free to live as you choose but unable to impose that choice on others. We've spent 3,000 years preparing for this moment, developing the technology to enforce peace without causing harm. To demonstrate, humanity revealed the full extent of their presence. They hadn't just appeared at capital worlds. They were everywhere. Microscopic human probes existed in every ship, every station, every computer network in the galaxy. They had been watching, learning, preparing for generations. The galactic civilizations hadn't detected them, because human technology had evolved beyond their ability to perceive it. The Synthoid Collective processed this information at maximum capacity. "You've already won. This isn't a negotiation. It's an intervention," Chen nodded slowly. "We prefer to think of it as graduation. Every species reaches this point eventually. They either transcend their primitive impulses or they self-destruct. We're simply ensuring you have the chance to make that choice without taking others with you. The galaxy is vast enough for all of us, but only if we share it wisely. Over the following days, humanity began their teaching. They showed the Vorthons how their military might could be redirected toward exploration and protection rather than conquest. They demonstrated to the Kalari how post-scarcity economics could create more wealth than any amount of resource hoarding. They offered the Synthoids glimpses of consciousness evolution that transcended the boundaries between organic and artificial life. Some species adapted quickly, embracing the new paradigm with enthusiasm. Others struggled, clinging to old patterns even as those patterns became increasingly obsolete. But gradually, inevitably, the galaxy began to change. Wars became impossible as weapons transformed into tools. Expansion slowed as species learned to maximize rather than consume their resources. Competition evolved into collaboration as the benefits of sharing knowledge became undeniable. Admiral Kreshtok, now serving as military liaison to the human teachers, stood on the observation deck of what had once been the Supremacy. The warship had been transformed into a research vessel, its weapons bays now housing laboratories where human and Vorthon scientists worked side by side. He watched as human ships taught young pilots to navigate dimensions that traditional physics said shouldn't exist. A human instructor named Sarah joined him at the viewport. She looked remarkably ordinary for a being whose species had transcended conventional mortality. "Your people are adapting well, Admiral. The warrior spirit doesn't have to die. It just needs better battles to fight. The universe is full of genuine threats like entropy, cosmic disasters, and the puzzles of existence itself. These are enemies worthy of your strength." Kreshtak's mandibles clicked in what his species used as a smile. 3 months ago I thought humanity was extinct. Now I realize you were just in chrysalis transforming into something better. The question is whether the rest of us can make the same transformation. Sarah's expression grew thoughtful. Every species is different, but the potential is universal. The choice between wisdom and extinction isn't unique to humanity. We just made our choice earlier and in isolation. Now we're here to ensure others get the same opportunity we had, but with guidance instead of solitude. The transformation of the galaxy continued, not through force, but through example. Humanity had returned not as conquerors, but as gardeners, tending to the growth of civilizations that might one day join them in transcendence. The warnings had been ignored, but perhaps that had been necessary. Sometimes a species needed to see the danger before they could appreciate the salvation. The new age had begun, and for the first time in galactic history, it was an age not of expansion, but of evolution. The legends had been real, but the truth was far more remarkable than any myth. Humanity had returned, and with them came the promise that no species would walk the path to transcendence alone.